I want to go back to your tuition. Of course, I was a freshman here in '61, about 10 years before you, and full-time undergraduate tuition when I was a freshman was $79.50. So it'd gone all the way up to about
it was, I think, 200.
About 200 when you were in school. But the president here, when both of us were undergraduates, was Robert R. Martin, and I don't guess there'll ever be another Bob Martin, but and then you had the great pleasure of serving with him in different chambers, but you were in the House when he was in the Senate after he retired from here. But Dr. Martin used to say, I can't number the numbers of times I've heard him say this, that the most effective form of student financial assistance is low tuition. Mm-hmm. Well, when I was paying my tuition, when you were paying your tuition, I don't know exactly what it was, but my guess is that our budget was at that point probably 80 to 85% state appropriation.
Yeah, that's right.
And 15 to 20% tuitions and fees, and it was that ratio that made that low tuition possible.
That's right.
And now it's about 65% tuition, 35% state appropriation on this campus, and a lot of people don't understand that shift is why the percentage, that diminution in state support is why tuitions have gone up faster than inflation. But I think it helps to underscore that. The fact that helps underscore that for me is that even in that period of time when we've gone from 65–70% state support to where we are now, the total amount of funds, state and tuition, per student has dropped.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So,
and I hope our alumni understand that about our current situation, because our state funding is greatly diminished over what it was when you and I were students, or even 15 years ago. It's gradually gone down because of the problems with the state budget. And we've tried to make up some of that with tuition, but you can only go so far because of the affordability issue. And now, whereas I guess maybe 5–6 years ago we could set our own tuition, now the council restricts us, so Eastern is squeezed on a financial basis from the continuing what we're currently looking at is continuing cuts in state appropriations. We'd be happy if we could just keep a even keel and would
not having a cut would feel like a increase.
Yeah, we'd think that was an increase. So you make a good point. I hope people understand that. But one thing that we have on our side is the ability to manage our own affairs, our own financial affairs, and I think unlike any other state agency, and I think that's a tremendous advantage to us, and it's going to cause us, as you're now directing us to do, to look at reallocation of resources to our most important priorities. Right. But we are looking at another budget cut in the next fiscal year, and we will have to make the most of the money we have and figure out where to save money. But it makes advancement and development and contributions from our alumni and from interested friends more important now than they have ever been.
It certainly does, and it also is, as you know, and you're involved in our efforts in this regard too. It makes us look for ways that, as an institution, we can be more entrepreneurial, grow more of our own resources. And of course, as we talk about, put the resources that we have in those areas where we have the most potential for growth. And then the other thing, and it's things will get better again at some point at the state level. I think it'll be a long time, before there are really any significant new infusions of new state dollars. But when that does come, we talked about accountability a while ago, and the major accountability metrics for post-secondary education in the state, I think, are going to be pretty simple. The major ones are going to be, how well do you do at retaining your students? How well do you do at graduating your students? And what's the time to degree that it's taking your students to finish up? And that's another thing that you and me and our colleagues around here are working on.
Absolutely. And I think it's clear from national trends, and I agree with those. I think we ought to be judged on our student success, and since you've been president, that has been your number one priority. And an important thing is to set priorities, and instead of having 100 and some priorities as we might have had here prior to your tenure, you have narrowed those priorities to 3, with student success being the most important, regional stewardship, and our quality enhancement plan, which, as you mentioned earlier, teaches our students critical and creative thinking. And I think if we structure our efforts toward those goals, we are going to be able to meet the performance standards that are set by us from the CPE and from what's expected from the General Assembly. Being in public higher education, and I think back to your statement about Bob Martin, because he was such an extraordinary individual. He was an accomplished educator, PhD, was one-time superintendent of public instruction, which of course was also an elective office at that time. He had to have a statewide election, and he was also a consummate politician, an educator and a politician, and that is almost, and if you look back when we became a university, brought the law enforcement money here to EKU, Bob Martin did, when he built many new capital projects on this campus to accommodate our uptick in enrollment as we grew as a university. He had to use his political acumen to do that, and that is required even more today, I think, for a university president. You have to be a fundraiser, you have to be a good politician, as well as understand the academic community and the important things that a trained educator understands.
Of course, Bob Martin, I've always considered Bob Martin one of the most politically astute people that I've ever had the pleasure to be around, and I think I may have used this line on an earlier edition of this series, but people talk about the skill, how important it is to be able to see around the corner. Bob Martin saw around the whole block.
Yeah.
I consider myself, you were talking about fortune a while ago, and I think you share some of this, but over your shoulder there's a picture of W.F. O'Donnell and Bob Martin, Ed Wayman, and J.C. Powell. And I never knew Mr. O'Donnell very well, except by reputation, but I consider myself very blessed to have had a lot of contact with Bob Martin, a lot of contact with J.C., a lot of contact with Hanley Funderburk, who followed J.C., and that wasn't a bad training program, I'll tell you.
No, your dedication and your whether you want to call it training or experience or the time that you've had it here at Eastern has been important to rejuvenating our campus and getting back to, I think, what the true spirit of our faculty and staff had always expected, and your time with JC and Dr. Martin and all those has been extremely important to us.
And we've got, as you know, a great faculty and staff on this campus. I'm very encouraged and heartened with the unity of effort that I think we're seeing on this campus right now. And like I've said before, it's a great time to be us and to be at Eastern. And Harry, with that, I think I'm gonna wind wind this one up, and thank you so very much for being our guest today on EKU Then and Now.
I've enjoyed it very much. Thank you, Doug.
Thank you.